Welcome to another episode of Healthcare Connections podcast, powered by Healthcare Compliance Pros. I am your host, Jeremy Winn. Our purpose for this podcast is to introduce you to key topics and experts in the healthcare industry to ensure you have what you need to successfully manage your practice. Please subscribe and follow us on our social media channels to make sure you don't miss any new episodes. If you have recommendations for guests or topics for this podcast, email me at jwin@hcp.md. With that, enjoy this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Winn, the Director of Sales here at Healthcare Compliance Pros. You're going to really enjoy our guest today. I've absolutely loved getting to know Christy Perry. She is the Chief Strategy Officer at Terri Ross Consulting. So welcome, Christy. So excited to have you on.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. And so for those of you, I'll let Christy introduce herself. But if you're not familiar with this group, Terri Ross Consulting, or TRC, as we kind of call them once you get to know them, they're the best of the best in the med spa, wellness, and aesthetic space to help owners be successful. So that's not even really worthy of what they do, that brief intro. But Christy, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the team?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Christy Perry, as you shared. I am I've been in this industry for 36 years. Started as a first assist in the operating room. I was a provider for a number of years as well, and then ended up on the business side, managing a very successful plastic surgery practice, medical spa, and surgery center for about 12 years before becoming a consultant, and have now been a consultant for about 15 years. So have been inside practices and on the outside, actually leading advisory boards and KOL, programs for software companies, many of the software companies that our industry knows. So it's been really amazing to be able to kind of learn both sides of the industry and serve both sides of the industry. And then our team, I'm so excited. I don't like to talk about myself that much, but let me just tell you about our team. Our team, I mean, we were trying to do the math the other day, and we've got like 150 years of combined experience in the industry. And that is really, what makes us unique as a consulting company is that we are a group of consultants that have such a passion for what we do, because every single one of us have either owned a practice, have worked in a practice as a manager, as a provider, as a patient care coordinator. So the advice that you get from my team, or our team at Terri Ross Consulting, is really advice that comes from the heart and having been there, lived it.
Yep.
So we don't, we're not one of, and I'm not saying that consultants do this, but sometimes you get consultants that give that advice from 20,000 feet.
Yep.
We are not that group. We are a group that really understand what it's like to be in the trenches. And I want to just pause it really quick. I sometimes say because I take ownership so much of the team, and I take ownership of the practices. It's just something that I do, but it's just a term of endearment. It's not meant to be egotistical or anything like that. So I just want to make sure that I will say that every now and then.
Love that.
Yep. Yep.
And I can speak, in my interaction so far, I was at one of the events that your team helps with recently, and
The 4S event,
the
correct?
4S Summit event, and I was just blown away at the depth and the knowledge and the detail that went into the content that was shared at that conference from Terry and others. And so, to your point, one of the first questions I was going to ask you is what makes you different, and I think you answered that a little bit. And maybe I'll elaborate just from my personal experiences. This isn't just theory. This isn't just, hey, go try this. This is, here's what's worked here. Here's why it works. Here's how you do it. Let us guide you on it. Okay, now let's do this. I mean, I was so impressed and blown away with, again, the care and the hand holding, and you said truly from the heart, with how you provide your services.
Yeah. It's with the amount of experience. And of course, Terri Ross is the visionary or the founder who created this company. And if you guys have not ever heard her speak, you should definitely, if you're at a conference and you have an opportunity to hear her speak, sit in on one of her talks. It is that she's an incredible speaker. She draws you in. You feel just again the passion and the care. And I want to make sure that what we do is with that is we have a tendency to really again own the practices that we work with. The team though, again, what makes us unique? So it's really important that practices and Jeremy, you guys experience this every day. They don't know what they don't know.
It's so true.
You experience that with compliance.
Yep.
I mean, how many practices do you get in there and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know I needed to provide hepatitis B vaccinations to my team." Just little things like that that they would never think about, right?
Yep.
It's the same for us. It's a fascinating statistic, and I might get a few of these things wrong because it's an old statistic. But if you look at the last 100 years, we've had over 200 physicians graduate from medical school.
Hmm.
In that time, they usually say I think it's 50 or 60% of them go on to open up their own practice
Yeah.
eventually, and less than zero, I think it's 0.003% have one semester in business or finance.
Yeah.
And they're trying to run often a multi-million dollar business
Correct.
without that acumen. And so that is where we come in is with again with the team, the 150 years of experience. We actually again we're kind of figuring out how many practices we've actually helped,
Yeah.
and it's been over 2,000.
That's amazing.
And so with that, that combined experience, we are able to bring all of that real world knowledge and kind of like what has happened with what has worked and what doesn't work, and to bring that to each practice individually and really tailor a program to help them be successful financially and to be more efficient.
Love that. Talk about now, I know just from experience, you really have zeroed in and really focus on the med spa aesthetics wellness space, but maybe talk about, are there other, specialties that you're helping with that you expand into? I know that space can touch multiple specialties, especially now that's growing. Maybe talk about, that, for our listeners, that may be of interest, if they're not strictly wellness or aesthetics,
Yeah.
but maybe they dabble in it, are you helping those groups as well?
We originated in aesthetics.
Hmm.
So we really started. That's where Terry, she owned a medical spa in Beverly Hills and had a successful exit for her first medical spa. That was quite a feat,
Hmm.
especially in a competitive market like Beverly
Yeah.
Hills. So we started in aesthetics, but it has really morphed into mostly self-pay practices. So anything self-pay. So yes, absolutely medical spas, plastic surgery,
Hmm.
facial plastic surgery, cosmetic dermatology, cosmetic gynecology, and urology.
Yeah.
But to your point, one of the things that we're seeing explode right now is wellness, functional, regenerative, integrative, anti-aging,
Yep.
and concierge medicine.
Yep.
And so, and all of those again are self-pay. But the reason that we're seeing that explosion into wellness, well, lots of reasons. It used to be where people didn't look as good as they feel.
Yeah.
And now it's the opposite. They don't feel as good as they look because everyone, has been able to get things done. But now they're like, I feel like crap on the inside, but I look amazing. So now we're seeing kind of that shift. But the other reason is the saturation. I think the statistics are, I want to say in 2022, we had 6,500 registered medical spas. 2025, it's going to be over
It's
12,000.
unbelievable
And
growth.
it is. So you have to differentiate yourself. You cannot be, there's 10 now med spas on every corner. So the way that practices are differentiating themselves is they're getting into the wellness, functional, regenerative space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about, some of the top strategies, so for a group that, and I love that I'll go back to that event, but there was so much emphasis on how to run a business, and particularly around, which every business needs, but how do you grow revenue? So maybe talk about some of the top strategies as you get into groups where you see, there's no true quick fix, but there are times where it's like, hey, if you just change this a little bit, you're going to drive this much more profit and revenue. So maybe talk about
Yep.
some of the top strategies that you see with groups that they can implement.
Yeah, the quick wins, we are really big on time to value, so if a practice signs up with us, yes, we absolutely have some of the most successful medical spas and plastic surgery practices in the world. I mean, we have really the top. We are very lucky and fortunate that we're trusted with, people who have been very successful. But on the other side, we also have what we call, and with all due respect, the Hail Mary practice, that if they don't make a change in 3 months, they're going to have to file bankruptcy, or they're going to have to take out a line of credit to make payroll. And so, what are the quick wins? The quick wins are, if you, but this is just a saying, but you can't manage what you don't measure.
Amen.
So first of all, it's so important to understand which KPIs you should be, what are the basic 5 KPIs that you should understand for your practice. And so the first thing we usually do is, when we do every practice, we do what's called a formal business report. We get into the nooks, the crannies, all the uncomfortable places that they may
Mhm.
not want us to look. And data doesn't lie. It's objective. And so we really look at the data for every single practice so that we can identify those top 5 priorities that we need to tackle first. And almost every single time, the one that moves the needle the fastest is, practices have a tendency to kind of believe that they have to race to the bottom when it
Right.
comes to pricing,
Right.
that they have to compete again with all those 10 medical spas. And so everyone's trying to lower their prices, give more discounts, give more specials, do more e-blasts. That is the opposite of what you should be doing. And, if you are providing an elevated experience, then you can continue to charge what you should be charging.
Yep.
So, number one, we look at what are the prices that you're charging for your procedures, and how much time are you scheduling for those procedures. And based on the benchmarks that we have, and we have very solid financial benchmarks that we review every 90 days, if we can get your pricing and the time that you're scheduling for your procedures within those benchmark ranges, it's amazing. We can sometimes see a 20-25% increase
Wow.
in revenue just from that.
Wow.
It just that one little thing, and it makes a huge difference. Obviously, if we though are going to do that, we now have to, back up what we're going to, if we're going to be charging more, we need to make sure that experience matches that
Right.
what we're charging. So then that's where the training comes in, the sales training. And really what we're known for is really teaching practices how to provide that elevated experience so we can charge what we're worth.
Yep. And I think you're seeing people want, in this space, if they're going, for certain procedures in this space, one, they want to go to people who do it well. They don't,
Yep.
people have seen the nightmares of, when things go wrong. And
Yeah.
that's, unfortunately painted a little bit of a black eye on the industry. But if you can do it well and you can provide them an elite experience, they'll pay for it.
Correct.
This is a space people will pay, the top market value to get the experience and the outcome that they're looking for.
And the safety.
And the safety, which is a big part of it,
Yep.
right? Which is where that compliance and that whole piece that ties into us and making sure you're doing things right, comes
Yep.
in.
That's why we bring you in
Yeah.
every time, right? He's like, "Okay, let's get your compliant, make sure," because again, outcomes, safety, and experience. If
Hmm.
we can, provide those 3 things, yes, people will pay more. They'll pay
Absolutely.
2, $3 more for a unit of Botox. They'll pay 50 to $100 more for a syringe of filler. They'll pay $100 to $150 more for a BBL or a laser. So if they know that they're gonna get a better outcome, it's gonna be safer for them, and they're gonna have, a better experience. Every single one of us will pay more for that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned, one of the pitfalls is the race to the bottom that
Right.
you really stress. You need to avoid that. You don't need to play that game.
Yeah.
What are some of the other common pitfalls that you see as you start working with a practice?
It goes back to, again, that business financial acumen that we unfortunately, we're not expecting our providers to really have that. They just don't. It's okay. But understanding right away, knowing what your, like, when you're looking at your profit and loss statement, you should know what your revenue breakdown is by service category. You should know truly what your variable costs are, as far as like your cost of labor, your cost of goods, your merchant processing, your financing fees. And you should know what your expenses are, broken into 4 very specific categories. And then knowing what your break even point is. So if you know that your revenue and what the breakdown is, you know that your cost of goods should never exceed 25% total. You know that your cost of labor for your provider should never exceed 20% of the revenue they generate, and you know your overhead expenses should never exceed 30%. We should be seeing about 20% or more in net profit after you do that. So knowing those numbers and really focusing on that on a monthly basis so that you can say, oh, wow, we're outside of this 30%. What's going on? Let's look at our expenses. that's a really important place to start, is really knowing those numbers and those benchmarks and knowing how to review it on a monthly basis.
Love that. Yeah, I think that's really valuable. And again, back to your point of, some of these providers, just they're just not taught this, unless they have
Yeah,
a natural acumen and kind of figure it out, right? They really need guidance and help, which is where groups like you can come in and help them with what is the most important part of running a business, right? You need to know
yeah,
how to manage your revenue, how to manage your expenses and ensure that you're profitable.
yep,
Nobody goes
absolutely.
into business to not be profitable,
No,
so you got to get that right.
yep,
And so yeah,
it's
that
not a nonprofit.
yeah, this is not a nonprofit. They'll have their
Yeah,
place, but this is not
yeah,
one of those that comes in. So, Christy, this is really good. And again, I've been blown away and just so impressed with your team. What's for those that are listening, best way to contact you if they're interested in learning more about your team and potentially working with you? What's the best way to go about that?
yeah, we love, terrirossconsulting.com, TerriRoss consulting.com. Go on there. There's a way that you can fill out what's called a discovery form. It tells us a little bit about your practice, kind of where you are in the business life cycle, gives us a little bit of information so that we can get back to you fairly quickly and give you some ideas of where you might be missing opportunities. Again, I know you mentioned like what is some of the biggest areas. I would say the biggest area that we also encounter is compensation. So many times, practices are way overpaying because a provider will be like, "Oh, this practice paid me 30%." So again, we will be able to kind of look at these things very quickly and make some suggestions right off the bat, and that's the best way. So reach out. Go to our website, fill out the discovery form, and then our amazing sales advisor, Craig, will reach out to you and he'll match you with a consultant, and then we'll get on a discovery call.
Very cool.
Yep.
Christy, this was so much fun. We'll need to do this again in the coming months, and talk
Absolutely.
about just maybe some other specific stories and things that you're seeing in the industry in this space because it's evolving.
Yes.
Everybody still commonly says this is the wild, wild west a little bit in this space.
Yep.
But I think it's settling in. I think there's leaders like you and your team that are coming in that are saying, "Hey, we need to establish, some standards in this industry." And I know your team's working hard on this, but really that's such a critical thing. And so I think you're seeing the wild, wild west. It's going to start to go away a little bit, and those that are doing it, with great outcomes, great safety, great experience. Those are the ones that are going to win. When everything settles. So I love what your team's
Absolutely.
doing. So thanks for coming on today.
Yeah. And Jeremy, I want to say one more thing on that point, what you just said. Terry and I have been actively involved on an advisory board for the
Mhm.
last 2 years to work on standards for non surgical. So we're hopefully, fingers crossed,
Yeah,
hopefully that will be announced January, February, March of this upcoming year.
so cool.
So we're super excited, and I know you've been a part of that as well. So let's hope that happens, and we've got something everyone can look forward to.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much, Christy. Appreciate you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeremy. I appreciate it. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. For more information on the topic we covered today, you can reach out to me or to our guest. For any additional information on healthcare compliance pros, feel free to email me at jwin@hcp.md. Don't forget to tune in next week. Thank you.